Hello, welcome back. Mike from Canavan Wealth here doing Mike Reads the Journal. It's February 7th, 2023. Let's jump right into it. I was pretty shocked for market news. I was expecting the first negative report that we've done since we started Mike Reads the Journal, but alas, we are up 0.8%. For the last couple of days, we've been slowly trending down. But I forgot that we did so well kind of the middle end of last week. So we are finishing about 0.82 up. I can't imagine that's going to continue for too much longer. We will have to see probably a leveling off or some type of a dip. If we were to continue on this trend, returns would be close to 60% by the end of the year, which is probably unrealistic. So I would expect some cooling off in the markets to come. We're still on this page. All right, first article. How do you cover the news right now without talking about the earthquake in Turkey and Syria? Death toll is at 5,400. To put that in perspective for those of us in the U.S., the 9/11, we had about 3,000 deaths during that time. Obviously, two very different events. Don't want to compare them, beyond that. But this is going to hit really close to home for people that were in this area. Virtually no one will not have known someone that was affected by this. If you see, this is the same area that the ISIS conflict was going on. I remember Aleppo from that time period. So this was already a pretty troubled area, and now this very dramatic earthquake is really going to affect the area. There is quite a bit of international aid being pledged, and this is a particularly political sensitive area right now. I'll get down to it right here. So Ukraine has pledged aid to Turkey. Obviously, the war in Ukraine is going on. And Turkey is involved on both sides of that war with their relationship with Russia, as well as their, pretty good relationship with the Western world, including the U.S. and then, kind of Ukraine stuck in the middle of all this. So how exactly all this is going to play out politically is going to be very interesting. But right now, it looks like the world is trying to focus on getting as much aid as they can to Turkey and Syria. All right, talking about the housing market. So I did a video yesterday about kind of the economic downturn by the numbers, where I cover a lot of charts, and I do talk about mortgages. Now, I think that video has better graphs than this particular, because this only goes back to 2022, and you see this dramatic drop in mortgages. What you don't see is this dramatic rise kind of in the middle of COVID as the great migration occurs, whereas people start going remote and companies realize they're never going to go back from remote, as well as a lot of people retire, which I'll talk about in a minute when I get to the labor market. We had this massive spike in people moving all over the country, and now that has really just returned to pre-pandemic levels. And then this is also home sales, so this is mortgage applications, home sales, really kind of the same graph. You just see them both kind of ticking up here finally. Now, are they going to look like this tick up and then we've seen the drop? We don't know. However, I think the big takeaway from both the video I put out yesterday and the video today and this article is that the housing market has not been devastated the way we kind of expected it, myself included, when interest rates went so high. But if you look at interest rates now, they're really just back to where they were in kind of just the early 2000s. So I don't think it changes the economics around owning a home. It's just not quite as cheap as it used to be. All right, the third article here is about immigration. Wouldn't be Mike Reads the Journal without me talking about a politically charged topic, because they're virtually impossible to avoid these days. I recently did a video on immigration where I talk through it. It was truly a way for me to educate myself, because it's all over the news, it's all over everything, and I just didn't know the facts around it. So I look at what's going on at the southern border, and the short conclusion of that is undoubtedly there is a crisis at the southern border. We're seeing record numbers of crossing, and U.S. Borders and Customs is undoubtedly overwhelmed. And the southern states that are dealing with this influx, I'm sure, are having a tough go of it simply because of the number of people. However, this article is talking about the labor market. And if you remember back to that video, I talked about one of the reasons we're seeing kind of record numbers right now is because of political instability in Central America. These countries right now are going through some really tough political times, and we're seeing a lot of the immigrants that are ticking up are from that area, where normally they have been from just Mexico, which is typically people coming over looking for work. We're now seeing kind of a lot of what we would consider more refugees. in this book, Good Economics for Hard Time, one of the first chapters on immigration, I think is the best chapter in it because they have the most data for it. And it talks about really there's a couple of reasons why people move. One is political instability. If they fear for their own lives or their environment has become hostile to them, they'll move. The other one is if there's tremendous opportunity where they're going. Simple truth is picking up your life, moving to another country where you possibly don't speak the native language without any type of connections to help you into the labor force typically does not end well. So that's what's going on as well. So it's not just the political instability, is that we have a ton of open jobs and incredibly low unemployment, specifically at like entry level or low income positions, as well as things that pay, have traditionally paid very well, like construction and, kind of the trades where they just can't get anybody in. And this is has a lot to do with the Great Resignation. So we talked about the Great Migration during COVID, and there's also the Great Resignation, which was when COVID hit, the baby boomers were already in their period where a lot of them were going to be retiring. So kind of a lot of upper management is retiring out of U.S. companies. And those are starting to be filled by middle management, getting, a promotion, entry level, kind of coming up to middle management. And then when COVID hit, everything went remote and the world just kind of got crazy. I saw it in countless clients of mine where they just said, I could have retired 2 years ago, but there's just no reason for me to. I enjoyed what I do, but I'm just going to retire now. So we see this kind of mass resignation based on workplace changes that were going on with COVID, and this, kind of filtering up. And I'm sure everyone remembers, because I know it's happening everywhere in the world. Every restaurants were changing their hours because they couldn't get waitresses or cooks or dishwashers. There was no amount of money they could pay them. I heard crazy things about, paying $50 an hour and whatnot for emergency situations where you absolutely have to have a dishwasher or something for Memorial Day weekend. So they just put out these ludicrous salaries. That has worked its way through, but we still have this huge gap in kind of entry level or lower income positions that migrants are finding a lot of work in, which is that opportunity, right? So it's not just that we have political instability in Central America, but there's a lot of opportunity for people to work here, but there's simply just not enough visas to cover all that work, right? We have specific visas. This article goes through it for seasonal work and things like that, but there's just no way that those are going to cover that need, right? So, there's all sorts of political views and whatnot about, whether you should be here legally or illegally, but the simple truth is that we have a massive demand for a labor force and none of the legal ways for them to have those jobs are sufficient enough for it, right? So do we need to secure the southern border and deal with that problem? Absolutely. But at the same time, we undoubtedly have an immigration system that does not meet the needs of our economy, right? So I will, before digging myself into too much deeper of a political hole there, I will conclude the video. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, you can send those to mike@canavanwealth.com. I am not allowed to have comments on the video. I will do some response videos. If you'd like to get a hold of me for an appointment or anything, go to canavanwealth.com, schedule an appointment there. I think there's also a link in the description. I hope this has been informative, and I will talk to you soon.